Danielle Marie Sleeper was a 32-year-old from Magnolia, Texas. She was a housewife and had 3 children. In the early morning hours of March 22nd, 2015, Danielle, her husband, and their child left a party. Later that day, the husband came home from an appointment to find Danielle gone. She was never seen again. I'm Ed Denzel, and this is Unfound. Friend. If there is ever a word that has been redefined in the 21st century, it's that one. I'm sure the younger people in the listening audience have no idea what I'm talking about. But for them, it makes total sense to call someone a friend who they haven't met yet. They couldn't pick out of a lineup, and they couldn't state what that friend does for a living. Once again, to younger people. Totally logical. But for the rest of us, the 40 and over crowd, yes, I know, I'm almost 50. For the rest of us, I'm still not sure we're used to it, despite us calling the above types of people friends as well. We're sure they're all perfectly fine people. We obviously have things in common since we are quote-unquote friends on social media. And we might even like to meet some of them one day soon. But it still feels weird when the F word, friend, comes out in describing one of these new school definition people. It almost feels like a slight to those old school definition people who have been there in person, through the tough times, through marriages and divorces, kids being born, parents dying, illegal drag racing and almost getting caught, or actually getting caught. Well, with Danielle Sleeper, when she was at her lowest after her divorce, one of the old school definition people came back into her life. They got married and had a son. But then Danielle disappeared. And we're left to decide if she went missing due to the return of a friend. And now a summary of the case. This is brought to you by my friend Megan Good's website, Charley Project. .org. Danielle Sleeper was the younger of 2 daughters. She was a country girl and got married at 19, having her first son shortly after that. A second son came a few years later. Danielle worked at home while her husband had a job outside of it. That marriage soured, and the two got divorced around 2008, with Danielle getting custody of the children. Not long after that, a man from high school came back into Danielle's life, Austin Sleeper. They never dated, but had been friends as teenagers. Soon they were a couple, got married, and had a son. That's when problems started again. Austin was accused of physically abusing Danielle's other 2 sons, a case that was still undecided at the time of Danielle's disappearance. In addition, Danielle had started telling family members that she was thinking about divorcing Austin. So, on March 21st, 2015, Danielle, Austin, and their son attended a party at the home of Danielle's friend, Megan. They arrived in separate vehicles. The party went into the early hours of March 22nd. At that point, Danielle and Austin got into an argument. Eventually, they and their son got in Austin's truck and left, leaving Danielle's Suburban at Megan's. Austin says they went home and went to bed. He got up the next day to meet some friends at 11:30 a.m. Austin claims that when he returned home at approximately 4 p.m., Danielle was gone. She was never seen again. With some different friends, Austin picked up Danielle's vehicle later that same day. Danielle's disappearance follows a similar pattern we've seen in other cases. Some of those include Rosemary Rapp, Charlotte Paulus, and Christy Nichols, where husbands say their wives just left, despite most of their belongings still being in the house. Yet Danielle's case has its own unique issues, causing these questions to arise. Number 1. Was it possible, given the time and distance, for Austin to do what he said he did that Sunday, March 22nd, including the picking up of Danielle's Suburban? Number 2. After her disappearance, why did Austin tell the police she had a variety of mental disorders when she had never been diagnosed with any of them? And number 3. If Danielle went to bed when they got home that night, why weren't the clothes she wore to the party the night before ever found? Danielle's family believes Austin knows what happened to her, despite there being no evidence connecting him to Danielle's disappearance. The guest for this episode is Danielle's mother, Dinah Street. Unfound News. Did you catch the game show on the Lord and Arts YouTube channel on Saturday night? If you missed it, you can go to John's channel to watch it. I enjoyed it. Weirdly enough, I was more nervous for that than I was for the interview I did with Dr. Telesco just 2 days before. How did I do on the game show? I came in third out of 4 contestants. No, I'm not mad at all. Really. Not mad, really. Not disappointed. Really. Not sad, really. Next, speaking of the interview I did with Dr. Telesco, if you missed it, it's now up on the Unfound YouTube channel. I don't think it could have gone any better. I enjoyed talking to her, and I hope we can do it again soon. And yes, those were real emotions when I spoke about how it's disgusting how Peggy and Patty McDaniel were forgotten by law enforcement for almost 40 years. Finally, not sure if it will be next week, but certainly within the next couple weeks, Unfound will bring to you a disappearance, actually at least 3 disappearances with the same probable suspect, all covered in the same episode, that we've been working on since early 2017. Everything finally lined up. I get very pleased when patience pays off. Where you can find Unfound. Unfound supports accounts on Podomatic, iTunes, Stitcher, Instagram, Twitter, Spotify, Deezer, and Facebook. On Wednesday nights at 9 p.m. Eastern, please join us on the Unfound podcast channel on YouTube for the Unfound live show. All of you can talk with me, and I can answer your questions. And for Patreon this week, I need to thank Shelley, William, and Miranda. I'm so happy to have on this episode of Unfound the mother of Danielle Sleeper, Dinah Street. Dinah, welcome to Unfound.
Thank you. Thank you.
You're very welcome. As we usually do, we start out with the family of the missing person. Let's talk about your family. Besides Danielle, how many other children do you have? And what were the dynamics of the Street family when Danielle was growing up?
She has an older sister. Her name is Tana. Danielle is my youngest daughter. We had a lot of fun. We did a lot of things. We were outdoor people. The girls were about 3.5, 4 years apart. They were close. They, together, as far as, their relations with each other. We were just very active people. We liked to go camping. We liked to go traveling. The girls were very outdoors type, children. They weren't in any sports, but they did like to do, fun things outside, swimming, skiing, boating, fishing, motorcycle riding. Their dad is a huge motorcycle rider, so is their mother. The girls were very active in that respect.
Okay. So you have 2 daughters, Tana and Danielle. And and the listeners should know that I got to talk to Tana, and I'm going to talk about the conversation I had with her. And we're going to talk about her, of course, during this interview, but I'm going to talk about my discussion with Tana after this interview is completed. So you have two daughters, into the outdoors. Maybe I shouldn't be surprised by that since you're in Texas. A lot of things to do
Right.
in that huge state. So let's move on to this. Danielle, in particular, you already said that she liked the outdoors, um, like you said, boating, motorcycle riding. What about maybe education? Was she in what kind of hobbies was she into? Interests maybe in school, like Girl Scouts, brownies, things like that.
Well, Danielle really wasn't into the Girl Scouts. Her sister was, but Danielle wasn't. But she graduated. She went all the way through the 12th grade. She was just very sociable. She enjoyed hanging out with her friends and doing things to that effect. She liked to, uh, you know, she really wasn't anything, you know,
Mm-hmm.
academically wise,
Okay.
but she did have a lot of friends, and they did a lot of things together. She loved to dance. Oh my goodness, the child loved to dance. They would go to the VFW hall with all their friends and
Uh-huh.
dance and stuff like that. But she liked to go to the beach. She enjoyed with her dad. They'd go. He would take her out motorcycle riding and stuff to that effect. She was just a very socialized type person.
Okay. You say she liked to dance. Did she have any training? Did you take her, like ballet dancing or whatever parents may take their daughter, to learn to dance, or was this just a natural thing, natural dance?
This was a nut. She liked the country and western dance. That was her
Oh,
biggest
okay.
thing.
All right.
She
Like,
enjoyed that. She uh she she like I said, she liked to go with her friends and dance on the weekends. But
mm-hmm.
she was a social type person.
Okay. Like the boot scoot boogie.
Yes.
Okay. I'm not in. Don't ask me to name any other country
I
dances
know,
because,
right? She liked to two step and
oh
stuff
yeah.
like that as well. Yeah.
Okay, don't ask me about anything else because I'm not into country music at all. But I do know that. Okay,
Yeah.
so she graduated high school. Did she have any other higher education? What did she do after high school?
Uh, no, she didn't go on to college or anything to that effect. She did try to. She was interested in taking a trade school to become a dental assistant, but that kind of fell through when she got pregnant with her oldest son. So she
Okay.
didn't end up going back. She ended up becoming a housewife and taking care of her children, and that to
Mm,
her was the most important thing, was to be home with her kids and to take care of them.
okay.
So she, at this point, she was raising children.
Okay. So she got pregnant at 19, 20 years old, or
Yes, she got pregnant. She was about, I want to say, it was about 18, 19 years old.
18,
Yes.
19. Okay.
Yeah.
Okay.
She
And
was out of high school at that time.
okay. And she was married to the father. She got married to the father of her first two children.
Yes, yes.
Okay.
She married Colton and Dylan, her older two children, and
Okay.
so she had gotten married
Oh,
and had those two first.
okay. So she gets married. I guess of course, I'm not married at 49, so anything younger than that is I consider young. But 19, 20 years old, she gets married. She has two kids, two sons, and she's a stay-at-home mom.
Right.
And he is out doing some type of job. And maybe we just want to use his first name just for the context of this conversation. What's
Okay.
his first name?
Brandon.
Brandon. Okay. So
Yeah.
Danielle and Brandon get married, and so she's into her early 20s. And how was that relationship?
It started out good,
Hmm.
but as time went on and as the children came, their marriage got very strained, very, very uh, in they didn't get along. They had a lot of differences and a lot of uh, he was very controlling,
Hmm.
and Danielle is not one to have that kind of control over herself. So she tolerated it for several years, and I think her youngest son was about 2, maybe 3 years old when she left. She couldn't take being in that kind of relationship, so they ended up getting a divorce around Dylan's age.
Okay. So just maybe to put this in a little bit of timeline, she was 32 years old when she disappeared in 2015. So I'm guessing maybe she got married around 2002, 2001, something like that.
Yes, because she got married after she graduated from high school.
Okay.
And her oldest son is February, and she was pregnant with him when they got married.
Okay. So what year would you say that they got divorced? 2008, 2009?
Yeah, thereabouts. In that area. I don't know the dates for verbatim, but yes,
that's fine.
I would say.
All right, just that's fine, as long as we can get the year right, just so everybody can keep this thing a little bit of a timeline.
Sure.
All right, so she gets divorced. Does she move back in with you? Does she get her own place? Does she get custody of the kids? What happens there?
When she left him, she found her a little place for her and the boys through a friend. It was like a little, like a garage apartment type thing. Okay. And then she lived there for a short period of time, and then she had met. That's when she had moved in with Austin.
Okay. So was there a period of time when she was by herself with her kids, and then you're saying that was shortly after that? There wasn't many months between her getting divorced and then her meeting her future husband, Austin?
That is correct.
Okay. So she's by herself.
Well, she had known.
Please.
She knew Austin from junior high. She knew him through some friends back when she was in junior high. And they were, just good friends, good acquaintances at that point in time. Mm-hmm.
All right. So, once again, did she get custody of her children in the divorce, or was it joint custody or something like that?
Yeah, no, she got joint custody, but she got parental custody of the children.
Primary?
Yes.
Okay.
Yes.
Okay. So she's by herself with her kids for a little while, but somehow she runs into Austin again. Do you even know how, if they were friends in high school, junior high school, do you even know how they ended up running into each other again?
Through mutual friends. I don't think they never lost contact with each other. Mm-hmm. They just visited every now and then. She would, reach out and talk to him, or he would talk to her, but they kind of kept in, acquaintances with each other. Nothing serious, nothing, but I think that she just had reached out to him after her and Brandon split up, and she, the divorce became final. Okay.
Maybe I should ask you this. Were they in the same grade in high school? Do you even remember that? Were they maybe even a couple in high school? Did they date in high school, or?
They were the same age. Austin and her are the same age.
Okay.
So they didn't go to the same schools. No. He lived out, Danielle and him didn't know each other through that means, but through people that she knew and he knew of the same, and that's how they met.
Okay.
He actually came to her graduation.
All right, but this wasn't like rekindling of an old relationship from like 10 years before or any.
No, they didn't have that kind of relation at the time.
All right. Did you know Austin outside before even the two of them getting married? Did you recognize his name? Did you know his family or anything like that? You personally?
I knew him through Danielle's, talk and conversations about her friends and stuff. I knew of him, but I didn't know more of him until after she and him hooked up after her divorce.
Okay. So how long would you say that after they ended up meeting again after some years, which she was married to Brandon, how long was it before they ended up getting married? What year did they get married?
Well, they lived together for, let's see, Hagen is I'm trying to think how old her youngest son is, because they got married right before Hagen was born, or before she got pregnant with him. She and Austin had lived together for about 3, maybe 4 years.
Oh, okay.
And then they ended up getting married, and shortly thereafter, she got pregnant with Hagen.
Okay.
Her youngest son.
All right, so they lived together for a while. 3 or 4 years, I would consider that a while. And all that time, Danielle still had custody of her other 2 children.
Correct.
Okay. And you said, like you said, they ended up Austin and Danielle got married. They had a child together, and his name is Hagen.
Correct.
What is that? Hagen? Is that how you spell it?
Hagen.
Okay.
Yes.
Okay. And how did you feel, you personally, your impression about the relationship and them getting married? I'm going to just maybe throw out a year, maybe 2012. If they met maybe 2009, 3 years living together. How did you feel about them living together, their relationship, them getting married, you personally as her mother?
At that point in time, you know, he was an easygoing type person. Austin was always a quiet type person that in front of us, in front of her parents. That, you know, he and her seemed to be compatible in a lot of ways. The boys liked him. You know, her older 2 sons seemed to like him real well. They got along good. And it, you know, through the years, they did okay between each other. And they had somewhat of a, I wouldn't say happy home, but they had a compatible home.
Okay.
And then it was when she got pregnant with Hagen, his son, things kind of started changing in the dynamics of the home. It got started getting very strained and very hard on the 2 older boys.
Okay.
And on Danielle as well.
Is this something that Danielle told you, or is this something you saw first, or probably maybe both, but did you see this firsthand?
Both.
You saw it firsthand as well.
Yeah,
so.
I saw it, and then it was also very evident in that how the boys were distancing themselves and pulling back and getting quiet, and they were glad to come over here versus being at home. But nothing was ever said to us in reference to the issues that were going on. And then at birthday parties, there was a big difference in the way that he was, you know, treating them versus how he was treating his own son. There started to become a very big division in that home because of that.
All right. If I can ask, did you and Danielle have conversations about this? And if so, what did she say?
Well, Danielle was I can remember one time I had gone over with her to visit, and she needed to go to the grocery store. And when we did, we had the boys with us. And Danielle made the comment to me that she did not like to go grocery shopping because when she got home, whatever groceries she bought, Austin put her through a lot of scrutiny. She couldn't even buy things to put in the boys' lunch for school. And, you know, she couldn't buy things that the kids enjoyed. There was always a struggle, a very hard thing for her to do, and it stressed her out tremendously. Okay. So she felt like she just couldn't be a mother to all 3 equally.
Right. So, and I know you've told me this, and so I'll just say it, just to verify what you're saying, that Austin was, of course, treating his son Hagen much differently than he was treating Danielle's 2 other children.
Yes, it was very evident.
Okay, it was like the other 2 children were like persona non grata.
Yeah.
They were just.
The boys got along great. The boys loved each other. Okay. All of them. And the older 2 boys, especially Colton, was extremely protective Colton and Dylan were very protective of Hagen, and they got along beautifully. They were very loving brothers, and they loved holding him. We've got tons and tons of pictures of the boys, when Danielle brought him home, and the kids just thought he was the best thing, and he loved them. He was extremely close to them. If they were visiting their father on his visitation, Hagen was lost. He truly did, and all three of them had a very strong connection.
Wow. Okay. Do you think that Danielle's ex-husband, Brandon, knew about this, that how Austin was treating his two sons?
No, I don't believe that the boys were opened up to him at that point in time. I don't believe that they were letting him know that there were issues at the house.
Okay.
But Danielle and Brandon did not have a good divorce. It was a very ugly divorce. And even after the divorce was final, they had, between the two, there was not a lot of a good relation there. Okay. They had their issues. Okay. And it didn't change when they got their divorce.
Okay. So this is just an example. For example, there was never a conversation that you heard about. Maybe Danielle said to Brandon or called him up and said, "You know what? Some things are going on over here with Austin. Maybe you should take the two sons for a little while before I get these things ironed out." Do you think anything like that ever happened?
No, I know it didn't.
Okay.
Because she was wanting to. Danielle would not have let the boys leave her. Leave. Yeah, because she was afraid that if she ever did, that she would never get them back. That was the kind of strain and struggle they were having between the two. Okay. And at that point, things, if anything, whatever was going on between Austin and the boys, they weren't telling their mother.
Okay. All right. Being that we are talking about the children, let's move on to this. At some point, though, before Danielle's disappearance, the two older boys were taken out of Danielle and Austin's home. Why did that happen?
CPS stepped in. One, Danielle had, like I said, there was a lot of strain and everything, but the boys had gone to their father's house for their time, during the summer. And she got CPS approached her about the middle child, Dylan, stating that when he was over at when he was over at the father's house, apparently he was changing clothes, and the father noted that there were some pretty strong handprints on his rear end, some bruising on Dylan's rear end. And he immediately took him to the emergency room, and from there, CPS was called in. The children were telling their dad about, that's when all of this came opened up, about the abuse that Austin was doing to the boys, and the different things and the strain that was happening with them. And they went through court. It was over a year that they had to go to court, back and forth, with CPS and the courts about the boys staying with their dad, not being able to come home with Danielle. So it was, they had determined that they were pressing charges against Austin for, it's not abuse of an adolescent. I'm not sure what the legal term is, but they had charged him, and he was getting ready to go to court and have to face charges through CPS.
Where was Danielle in all of this? Do you think that, so I guess what we're saying is this is something that was real. This is not something that the two older sons were making up. Just,
correct.
And once again, I'm not a parent, but I sometimes know that some kids that are involved in divorces Sometimes they will play one off parent off against the other. This does happen.
Right.
We know it happens. But this was not something like that. This was something that was real.
This was real.
Okay.
This was real.
Okay.
And it wasn't, Austin had a great way of covering this up, keeping it on the down low in front of everybody else.
Okay. Where was Danielle caught up in all of this? Do you think that she knew these things that were going on, what Austin was doing? What do you think?
I don't believe she would have, because I know Danielle. If she had known that, if she was, the boys must have, and I don't want to assume, but Danielle would have been very open about it, and she would have been very verbal about any abuse done to the boys. She would not have allowed that, any kind of beating or any kind of handling of her boys, roughly. She would have gotten out. She would have come home. She would have told us about it.
Okay.
And she, the problem that she was having was more of her relation with Austin than knowing about her relation, the boys' relation. They said that they were told that they had to keep quiet, but they didn't even tell their father. That's how quiet these boys were being.
All right, and he just happened to see it.
They were afraid for Danielle, and they were afraid for Hagen.
Okay. Now, when these charges popped up, when this happened, Brandon, the father, sees these marks on one of his son. CPS gets involved. Did Danielle defend Austin, or did she? What was she saying to you? Was she startled by these charges, or what?
She was startled. She was, and she, like I said, the relation that she had with Brandon was very negative, very strangful, very, and she felt he'd always commented that he was going to take the boys away from her. He was going to get the kids away from her. So she felt that this was possibly his way and ploy of getting the boys from her. And they, she really didn't have the opportunity to find out what truly was going on. Because once CPS stepped in, Danielle was not allowed to talk to them. Danielle was treated very negatively by the courts, saying that she allowed this when she didn't. And she also, she had a lot of strain in her relation with Brandon.
Yeah.
So she never had the opportunity to sit down and talk to her boys and find out what was really going on.
Yeah.
She had, she was monitored every time she saw the children. She was set up, it started out with having to see her own children with his sister, Brandon's sister, watching every move she made. And she tried to talk to him. She got caught. She just never had the opportunity to get down to the, information about the boys.
At any
then
point,
she ended up getting set up with visitations through a program in Montgomery County that she could go to every 2 weeks. She was allowed to spend 2 or 3 hours with the boys at that time. And again, somebody watching every move she made. She wasn't allowed to ask these questions. She wasn't allowed to talk about things that, she needed to know. So she kind of got shut out right in the very beginning.
When you would talk to her, would you say, when this topic came up, and I guess we probably are talking about the years, 2013, 2014 into 2015, in that area?
Yes.
When you remember these conversations that you had with Danielle, was she more in defense of Austin, saying he wouldn't do this, or would you say that she believed that Austin did this?
Danielle, like I said, Danielle was on the fence post about all of this.
Okay.
Because she never saw any marks on her boys. She never saw any handprints on them. So it was kind of hard for her to believe what was going on. And again, this was coming from a man that had been threatening her forever to a man that was shutting her, being very threatening to her. She was kind of like in the middle between these two people.
Okay.
And so she never got a chance to have that opportunity. She was fighting for it. She was trying to get time with her children. She was trying to find out, other than just hearing other people tell her what was going on and not her own children. So she was not one. She was very skeptic of Alston. She was very distancing herself. Little by little, she was pulling herself away from him. She was opening up more and more about her relationship with him and her fears. I think Danielle was, I do believe, just because of the way she was and how she was had to, I think she was afraid for herself, and she was afraid for Hagen.
Okay. All right, we're certainly going to come back to all of that. Okay, I just wanted to make sure that the listeners understood that. Now, in the process of this custody and everything that was going on with CPS, she got an attorney, and we're not going to mention this attorney's name, but this is somebody that was representing Danielle, and you've portrayed this attorney, who is a woman, as being incompetent. How did she get this attorney, and why do you say that she was incompetent?
Well, Austin is the one that had found this attorney, and she was out of Houston, and the kids lived in Montgomery County. All of this was handled in Montgomery County. So she specialized in CPS cases, and so she was coming out of Houston. And instead of saying, I don't want to drive all the way to Montgomery County, I don't want to take on a case that's not in the same district or county that I'm in, she took it on. But she was very laxed, she was more concerned about her cases in Houston than she was in Montgomery County. So bad so that when Danielle's case came up for the first time, she was busy taking on and answering calls and dealing with another case, so much that the court had to hold off. She asked the judge to wait for her so that she could finish on this other case. She was not focused on Danielle. She was not in Danielle's best interest. She did not advise Danielle, the way that she should have been advised. She was not into this case. It was more of a bothersome for this, and instead of not accepting it, she accepted it. And Danielle, and she was not she didn't fight for Danielle in any way when she got into the court. She was she was bulldozered by the judge and by the other attorney. She just was not there for Danielle. She did not give her good, solid information.
How did Austin even know about this attorney? If this attorney was
found her in an ad. He just went on in the phone book. She wasn't deferred to him by anybody other than he picked her out of a phone book. And she wasn't even here in the Houston area for very long. She was from way up north, up around the New York area. I don't know if it's actually New York, but she was up in the eastern area. I'm going to put it that way.
Okay.
So she wasn't, familiar with Houston and the Harris County and Montgomery County laws and stuff.
Is there a reason? How long was this? I'm guessing this attorney was Danielle's attorney until Danielle disappeared.
Yes.
Okay. How long was this attorney? How long did this attorney work for Danielle then? How long was it?
A year.
About a year?
It was almost a year.
Did you ever talk to Danielle? Danielle, maybe you need to get somebody else. You ever have that conversation? What did she say?
We had plenty of conversations, but for the money that they were putting in for her to retain her, and then trying to find somebody that would replace her, she had difficult times, being able to take this case on. Now that this other attorney had already been in it. So she was having difficulties there, and then she was being pushed, her husband, Austin, wasn't being very helpful at the time either. He himself located a very I want to say bulldog, but very strong attorney in Montgomery County. She was very well known about her mannerism and how she would handle cases and how people were intimidated by her. She had a name for herself, and that's who he got for himself directly to fight CPS for the charges.
Okay. All right, so she has this attorney not doing a very good job for her. And just so we understand what job she was trying to do, Danielle was trying to get custody of her 2 sons back. This was the point where she was only allowed to have supervised visits with them.
Yes. She wasn't given the opportunity. Her attorney did not fight for her to get her visitations, in a better setting. The other attorney just kind of pretty much ran control over how the boys and how her visitations were.
Okay.
Danielle's attorney did not fight for her to have her children where she could see them and not be watched 24/7. She was made to feel that she was a bad mother because she didn't leave the home.
Okay. Do you believe if Danielle had not disappeared, do you believe that because of this attorney not working as well as she should have, do you believe that Danielle would have lost her case?
Yeah.
Okay.
I do. But there had been a turning of the case right before Danielle's disappearance.
Okay, well, let's maybe we should talk about that right now. What was the turning point? What was something that happened right before she disappeared?
Danielle had been fighting and pushing to have a extensive evaluation, a very detailed, very extensive evaluation, which was going to cost about $7,000 to $8,000, and it would be out of her pocket. But she had requested this evaluation of Austin, herself, Brandon, and Brandon's girlfriend at the time, who the kids were, he was living with, and the 2 boys. And she had been pushing and requesting this by the courts to approve that evaluation. And the week of prior to her disappearance, the courts had approved it.
Was this, maybe we need to go through this a little bit. Was this going to be something like a counselor or a psychologist interviewing all of them? What would this mean?
Yes. This would have been an extremely detailed evaluation. It wasn't just going to be, very lightweight. It was going to be an extreme valuation on each one of them, on their parenting and on their person and on their relation. I mean, it was going to be very detailed, and I think it would have probably brought out a lot of information that no one wanted to bring out.
Okay,
so this happened. Was extremely, she was very adamant about getting this.
Okay, and this happened a week before she disappeared.
Yes.
Okay.
Austin, one of the things, and I wanted to say, because I think this is important about that, the use of money. The money became a very strained issue because of all the retaining that was done with her attorney and his attorney, and now they were looking at this evaluation. And Austin had been taking off quite a bit of time from work on medical leave, and it was becoming extremely difficult in their household between the 2 of them, and he was really getting bothered by the money and the money that was getting, having to go out of pocket, which I can understand, but it changed the dynamics with them quite a bit.
And you know this because Danielle was telling you this?
Yes.
Okay. How did Danielle feel about all this money that was being spent on attorneys and everything?
Of course, that was a lot of money for her, and she felt that that her she wanted her children back.
Of course.
She wanted the kids back. And if it meant spending everything they had to get it, she wanted her children back home. Austin did not. Austin did not. And he very openly and very clearly acted and did everything he could to not have things turn out in her favor. He was very, you could see if they went to court, if he ended up going to court with her and the court date at that time did not come out in her favor, I was with her almost every time she went to court. And when she did, Austin was very, very happy, I guess you want to use the word, that things were not coming out in her favor.
How do you know that he was happy, Dinah?
He was not happy. He was happy in the fact that he would be very cheerful because things were not, whenever she would tell him what was going on, you would think that if somebody was wanting the kids home like her, that he would be, very disgruntled, very, but then when she told him how things turned out, he was very calm about it, very, very okay with it. It wasn't
did you experience
really
this once again? I just have to ask you this. Did you experience this personally? Did you ever have any conversations with Austin where he seemed like he was happy that things weren't going Danielle's way?
Yes, my husband was with me at the same time, and we'd gone to lunch after the court date, and you could tell he was, just by his mannerism, just by, kind of saying, oh, well, he just was not bothered by it.
Okay.
It didn't seem to bother him. He had said at one time that he did not want boys back in the house, that the strain was not there.
Okay.
He did not want the two boys back home.
Okay. And Danielle knew this, that he didn't want the two kids back.
Oh, yeah.
Okay.
Yes.
Okay.
And that
So
bothered her too.
I guess what I'm saying is this puts her in a very difficult place, between a rock and a hard place.
Yes,
her husband doesn't want the kids back.
Right.
She does want the kids back. Of course, Danielle and Austin have a child together. And then on top of that, he's been accused of these things, abusing at least one of the other kids. We're not saying sexually abused, but maybe hitting them and things like that. And, so that she's between a rock and a hard place there as well.
Correct.
Okay.
Correct.
Okay.
She was also, I don't know, Danielle, well, I can go into talking about her feelings, how that had started changing with her and him.
Well, but let's talk about what did some of the things that she said in maybe the month before she disappeared about their relationship.
Well, even months, even almost a year before all of this happened, before she disappeared, Danielle no longer slept in the same bed with him. Danielle no longer thought of him as, the man that she's in love with. She did not want her feelings for him were starting to change a lot. And she was seeing a person that she didn't want to stay with. She slept on their couch. He slept in the bed. She slept on the couch. My granddaughter came to stay with her, and they slept on the couch in the living room. Danielle did not. She had started talking to me about wanting to get a divorce, wanting to. She knew she was going to have to go to work and find a job to be able to support her family, and she was at that point of getting there before she disappeared, because she knew that was going to be the only way that she was going to get her two children back home.
Okay. Let me just ask you this. This brings us more up to the present day, and then we'll continue. Being that now that the two older sons, I mean, they were born in the early 2000s, so they're in their teenage years or later teenage years. Have you ever had a chance to talk to them about what Austin did to them? And if you can say.
A couple of years ago, we were able to finally get past a lot of strain with their father, because there was a lot of strain with us and Brandon. And he and I had numerous conversations in regards to the boys and what was going on in that household, and how things were happening, and how the year before Danielle went disappearing in the courts, and all of that. There was a lot of strain there. So he and I finally had some good conversation, and I wanted, I told him, I said, how can we know what's going on when we were never allowed to talk to the boys, never allowed to hear what they had to say? Even you yourself had not known what was going on until all of this came down. So I said, my husband and I, Danielle's dad, we went over to Brandon's home and sat out in the front yard, and I told Brandon, I said, you need to stay away. You need to let us talk to them. And so we did. We sat out there for probably a good hour or so and just talked to the boys, and they were finally opening up and telling us the things that had been going on in that house and the stress and the strain that was happening, and how they were afraid of him and how they feared
Afraid of Austin.
Of Austin, yes.
Okay.
And so we were able to finally get a better, clearer picture of what had been happening. And this was after their mother had already disappeared.
Yeah, of course. It's only a couple of years ago, yes.
Yeah.
Okay, so they, at that point, being, once again, a couple of years ago, maybe they're maybe 13, 14, 15, somewhere in there at the time, they maybe at that point kind of know a little how the world works. Maybe they know about abuse and things like that. They could tell you and realize what they were saying when they told you about what was going on, a few years before Danielle disappeared, their mother disappeared, and how Austin treated them.
Yes.
Okay.
Yes.
All right. So all this is going on, and I just want to. This will move us up to very close to her disappearance. You had told me that on the Saturday that she was going to this party that we'll eventually talk about. She was supposed to go to one of these appointments with to see both of her sons, and she missed it. Why don't you talk about that?
Danielle's visitation was every other Saturday morning, and Danielle would normally, where she lived and where the visitation center was closer to my home. So on the days that she would go to visit her boys, she would bring her youngest son to my house, and the night before, and I would watch him while she went over and visited the older two. That Saturday night, it was a Friday night. Danielle, it was raining, and she told me she was coming over, but then it got later in the evening, and I reached out to her, and we talked, and she said that she had decided to go ahead and stay home and get up and go in and see the boys do their visitation. Well, that morning, she had to be up and at the facility by 7:30 in the morning, because the doors would open at 8. Danielle had her alarms all set up, several alarms, so that she would get up and get dressed and be ready and drive a good hour to get to where she had to be. Her alarms never went off. Their alarms did not go off. And she ended up waking up at the hour that she was already supposed to be there. So that Danielle she never missed the children's visitation. She was always there that every 2 weeks. That was something that she looked forward to. The night before, she'd gone out shopping to get things for the boys to do while they were there. And she felt very strongly and told her husband that she felt he turned all the alarms off, that he cut those alarms off, that he deliberately prevented her from going there that day. So she got really upset with him. She ended up going in, getting dressed, cleaning up, got dressed, and she was going into the little town close to where they lived. And then while she was gone, she met up with her friend Megan, the friend's house that they were at. And they spent the day together and made arrangements to get together that evening at Megan's home and have like a little barbecue, like hamburgers and hot dogs, and have the kids play.
So that's where the start of this party. That's where the planning of this party got started.
That is correct.
Okay, let me just go back for a second. How did you find out that Danielle did not make it to that appointment that Saturday? Is that something you found out that day, or did you not find out until after she disappeared?
After she disappeared, because I knew that she was going, so I reached out to her later that day to find out how the visitation went, and she had not gotten back in touch with me. And so when I kept periodically trying to reach out to her during the day, Danielle's real good about getting back to me, but apparently she was upset, and she was with her friend Megan, so I didn't get to talk to her that night. I found out through her friend Megan what had happened.
All right, so just to explain this,
so I've been with her all day telling her what had taken place.
Okay, so she's supposed to get up that morning, so she's supposed to be there at 7:30. It's an hour drive, so 6:30, maybe she gets up at 6 in the morning.
Yes.
But because of this alarm situation, she doesn't even get up till like 7:30. She doesn't even wake up till the time she's always supposed 8 o'clock.
So 8 o'clock.
The other time she's supposed to be over there.
Correct.
And what she told Megan later that day is she suspected that Austin had turned off these alarms, maybe on her phone, maybe on a good old-fashioned clock that sits by the bed, whatever she used. She told Megan she believed that Austin shut these things off.
That is correct.
Okay, and then after she disappeared, when you ended up talking to Megan, how many days later, Megan told you this story?
That was on a Saturday. I talked to Megan that following Tuesday.
All right, so 3 days later, after Danielle disappears, you're all looking for, of course, for Danielle at the time, and that's when Megan relays to you what Danielle told her the previous Saturday. And
that's correct.
And then so to that point, you did not know that Danielle missed this appointment.
That is correct.
Okay.
Well, at that point, I didn't know that, yes, that she had not had a chance to go see the boys.
Okay.
I did also find out, though, even before that, I did find out because I talked to Brandon, the boy's dad.
Oh, okay.
Because he had found out that, that Danielle had been missing for 2 days. And he reached out to me. He contacted me and told me that he had the boys up there for her visitation, and that she had shown up.
Wow.
And that she had called the center where she was supposed to go. She had called them when she woke up and told them about the alarm system, the alarms not going, that she missed the alarms, that they got turned off. She didn't say how. She just told them that the alarms were turned off, and that she knew she was going to miss their visits. So she had reached out to them so it would not look bad on her, about not being there, and to let the boys know that she had intended to be there.
Right. Do you know if Austin ever owned up to this alarm situation? Never?
No.
Okay. All right, just a few overall questions, and then we'll move into later that day after she missed this appointment talking about Megan and this party. It sounds like your daughter had a lot going on between losing 2 of her kids, between Austin not wanting her 2 other children in the house, them having a child together, Hagen, of course, these charges that we can't forget that Austin had these charges against him, and he had his own attorney. a lot going on. How worried were you about your daughter?
Very, because she was starting to really stress out. She was losing weight, a lot of weight. She just got a lot of um, changes in herself. She just was not the girl that I knew, the lady that I knew. She was becoming withdrawn. She was very distancing. She just was not. She wanted her children, and she was very open about that. And she just didn't understand why. You know what I'm saying? She wasn't she was getting fed the things that she felt the ex wanted her to know, not being able to talk to her kids. She felt her relationship with her children were becoming very distant and very strained. So it was very hard on her, very, very hard.
Did she ever talk to you in those weeks before she disappeared? Did she ever talk about divorcing Austin?
Yes. She had been at my house the week before. She'd come over here and stay periodically with me, and we would talk about it. And she had when I talked to Megan, when I met up with Megan after Danielle's disappearance, that was a conversation that she and I even had. That Danielle and her had already started talking about getting her resume together. That she was even willing to, help her get a job, and help her get a resume together. So that conversation was very, just, very open.
It was something in the forefront of Danielle's mind.
Yes.
Okay. All right, so let's move up once again to that day. That would have been March 21st. That was the day that Danielle was supposed to meet her two sons in the morning, but she did not end up there. She claims that Austin did something to the alarms, whatever alarm she was using. So instead, but later that day, she meets her friend Megan. Megan says there's going to be this party, and so let's talk about that party of that evening. Who was there? And what went on?
Okay, well, it wasn't anything of a party. It was more of just a get-together, a barbecue.
Okay.
It wasn't, it was going to be Megan and her husband, Danielle and Austin, a friend of theirs, Spody, and another friend that lived across the street from Megan's house, and his girlfriend. So it was just going to be a gathering of people, and they were going to cook hamburgers and hot dogs and just let the kids get together. That day, that Saturday, Danielle had met Megan. She met them at a Walmart in Tomball. And so they had gotten together. They went, Danielle needed to get her hair colored. Megan wanted to get her hair colored. So they bought the stuff to do that with at the store while they were out. So that was what the girls were going to do that evening. They were going to get in there and color each other's hair. While the guys sat outside and talked and drank their beer and had their, cooked the food and all this. So they ended up having too much fun, so they didn't do their hair. They ended up telling each other that Danielle would come back the next day, Sunday, and they would do the hair then.
Okay.
Austin had made plans with two of the guys, Spody and Charles, to go to a bar that was owned by Spody's uncle, I believe it was, to help move some furniture around in the bar. The guy needed help, and so Austin and Spody and Charles were going to go over there Sunday, meet and do that stuff, move the furniture around. Charles is paraplegic. He's lost both his legs due to an accident.
Wow.
He could not understand why they wanted him there. He couldn't understand why he was being asked to come because he couldn't help. He couldn't do anything. But they wanted him there. So Sunday,
Let's just
Saturday.
let's just stick to Saturday for now. So there's the
Saturday.
party. Everybody
The
gets
girls
together.
were having a good time. They
Mhm.
were all enjoying it. Danielle was still extremely upset. She was really upset. And she did not, when it got to be about 1 o'clock in the morning, Austin wanted to go home. And Danielle had driven her Suburban to Megan's home. Austin came in his truck to their home. So they had both their vehicles there. Danielle didn't like driving at night because she had somewhat of night vision. She had a hard time seeing at night.
Okay.
So she really didn't want to drive her car home. She also was not wanting to go home to their house. She was still pretty upset. And
this is what Megan. This is just so we're clear for the listeners. This is what Megan told you afterwards. You weren't there. This is what Megan told you a couple of days later, and it is Megan's house, so she would know.
Yes.
Okay.
And Megan she was, in these conversations.
Okay.
So she was there in the room during all of this. Danielle told him she didn't want to go home. She was going to stay the night. He got very, very agitated, very, very upset. He, being Austin, got extremely upset with her and very irritated and started yelling at her that she was his wife and she needed to come home with him. Hagen got upset as well because he didn't want to go home. He was screaming and crying, and Danielle was holding him. He wanted to stay and play with the kids. He wanted to stay and be with his mother. He didn't want to go home. So Austin was getting very aggressive verbally. And so Danielle had Hagen. Now, this is what Megan said she witnessed.
Okay.
This was, Hagen was sitting in her lap on the couch, and Austin was getting right up in his face and getting very aggressive with him as well. And Danielle finally told him to get back, to go on out to the truck, that she would come on home with him. She said, I just need to get my stuff together and I'll be outside. So he did go outside. Now, the young man that was also at this party, who was one of their neighbors, had already gone home, but he was sitting on his front porch of his home, and which could see directly across the street to Megan's house and the vehicles. We talked to him. I personally talked to this young man. He said that Austin was very aggressive and very agitated, very angry, and went to his truck and slammed the door shut. And he was standing there all bothered outside of his truck. Well, Danielle finally did come outside, and she took the baby and he handed him off to Austin, and he put him in his car seat, which was in the back seat of the car. Austin got in our truck. Austin got into his side. Danielle got in on her side. She left her Suburban at Megan's home because she was intending to come back the next day with Austin to be with Megan and do her hair, because he was also coming back to get the two men, and they were going over to this bar.
Right. Okay.
So the young man across the street, I asked him, I point blank asked him, how did they leave this place? How was the atmosphere when they left? And he said they were at each other. They were arguing with each other, very angry at that time. And they got in, slammed the door shut, and he drove out pretty aggressively out of the park that they lived in. And so it would be, at that time, there was a lot of strain that was witnessed by other people.
Okay. So the three of them leave. That would be Austin, Danielle, and their son Hagen. They leave.
Correct.
And the Suburbans left there.
Correct.
And what time? This would have been now into March 22nd, which is a Sunday, but very early morning.
About 1:30 in the morning.
1:30 in the morning.
They left Megan's home.
Okay. So they left. Now, I want to set the March 22nd up this way. What do you remember that day, that early morning, that day? What were you doing that day?
I had taken off 2 weeks of vacation time from work. So I'd already been off a week. I had things I needed to do, personal things. So I was off, and I was at home with my husband. We were relaxing, enjoying the day. I had not heard from Danielle Saturday. So I reached out to her that mid-morning around 8, 9 o'clock. I was texting Danielle. I was calling her. Still no answer from her. No communication with my daughter. And this was unlike Danielle. Danielle was good about responding back to me and calling me and answering my texts. Just at least let me know she was okay. And she knew the last time I talked to my daughter was Friday night when she told me that she wasn't coming over. And that was the last conversation that I had with my child. And she was happy. She was excited. She was looking forward to seeing her boys that she hadn't seen in over 2 weeks. So that's what I have in my mind. She had... So when I couldn't get her, I was getting very concerned that we were not communicating, that she wasn't returning my phone call. I had no way of getting a hold of her at that point. So Sunday, I didn't hear out of Austin either.
Did you try calling him when you could?
Yeah. I did not hear from him until Monday morning at 8 o'clock in the morning when he called me.
Okay. Did you try calling Austin when you did not get to reach Danielle that Sunday? Of course, that is March 22nd is the accepted date of her disappearance. No matter what people are going to lean which direction regarding this disappearance, but March 22nd, you could not reach her. Did you try calling him to find out?
Yeah.
Could you not reach him? He wouldn't.
No, I could not reach him, but he wasn't even there at the house. He was off. I'm assuming that he didn't respond because he was gone.
Right. But I'm guessing you had his cell phone number or something.
Yes, at that time I had the number that he had.
Okay.
Yes.
So either he didn't know you were trying to contact him, or he was ignoring your calls or texts or whatever.
Yes.
Okay.
Yes.
All right. So you don't hear from Danielle. You're trying to reach her. You can't, of course, reach her. Austin, you're trying to contact him. He's not getting back to you. He's not picking up your phone. Did you even know that?
I did not know Megan at this time.
Okay, did not know Megan at this time. So you're kind of in the dark as to the party from the.
Did not know what had taken place in those 2 days. That is correct.
Great. Okay, thank you. And at this point, like you said, you hadn't talked to her in a couple days. I'm guessing you didn't think that she disappeared. Were you just thinking? What were you thinking?
Well, that she was tied up. That that she was with her son. That not at that point. It didn't really anything register to me. Mm-hmm. Because it wasn't, Danielle was good about getting back, but it wasn't to an alarming concern at that point. I was not concerned that she was not getting back to me at that point in time. Because we may be a day or two before she'll reach out, and she would give me some reason why she wasn't calling. I mean, I didn't find it to be unusual.
Okay. All right. Thank you. That's okay. That's a good explanation. All right. So you've already stated. Then we get into Monday, which once again, putting this in the timeline for the listeners so they can all understand this. We get to March 23rd, 2015, which is now Monday morning. Remember, the party took place on the 21st. That's Saturday evening. And then we have Sunday the 22nd, March 23rd at 8 a.m. Austin calls you. What does he say?
He's telling me that Danielle, he wanted to know if I'd seen Danielle, that she was not home. And so at that time, I was concerned as to where would she be? Why would he be calling me wanting to find Danielle? And I said, no, I don't know where she is. I don't, he didn't lead us. He did not provide any explanation about them having a dinner party, Saturday night. He didn't go into any details about him going over and getting with his friends Sunday. He did not get into any explanation as to what happened Sunday. He had not explained himself. So I said, well, then here, check with some of her friends, reach out to some people she knows. And he said, oh, okay, I'll do that. I'll do that. He was real quick to get information out of me and, who he could call. The thing that what bothered me, too, was that he didn't reach out to her sister, Tana. Mm-hmm. He didn't. He only reached out to me. He only let me know that Danielle was not home. Okay. He didn't try to explain to me that who all he'd been in touch with. So.
Did he give you any particulars when he called you and said Danielle's not here? Right. Did he say, I got up in the morning, she was gone, or I went out, I came back, and she was gone? Did he give you any particulars whatsoever at that time?
I'm trying to remember that morning. It was such a blur to me. Mm-hmm.
If you're not sure, that's fine. If the answer is not sure, you're just not sure. That's fine. I need to.
Well, I'm trying to remember that morning.
Yeah.
When he called me, he told me that Danielle wasn't home. I asked him, what are you talking about? He said that he had gone out Sunday to help some friends move some furniture at a bar. He did tell me that.
Okay.
He told me when he got home that Danielle wasn't there and that he had waited. He waited a whole entire day and didn't reach out to me until the following Monday. Mm-hmm. He didn't. He just offered the explanation that he had left the house and had Danielle, when he got home, she was gone.
Okay. At any point in that conversation, did he tell you that her vehicle was still over at this woman Megan's house? Did that even come up?
No,
okay.
That did not come up.
All right. So he tells you that she's not there. Doesn't give you, it sounds to me like a lot of particulars. All he's saying is he went out, and we do know that he met Charles and Spody, and if people are wondering how to spell his name, it's Spoede, Spody. He did meet these guys at approximately what time, 11:30 a.m.?
11:30, 12 o'clock.
Okay,
right.
And then what he is saying is that then after that, he came back home, and then that was when Danielle was gone.
Right.
All right, does that then...
He had left her home asleep on their couch when he left that morning.
Okay. All right, I want the listeners to remember that. That's going to be important for later. All right, so you hear about this, and my understanding is that you didn't go to Austin and Danielle's house, but your husband, who is also Danielle's father, and your other daughter, Tana, did go to Austin's. Why don't you tell, and to remind the listeners, I did talk to Tana about this, and I will talk about what she said in particular about it, but I want your interpretation of what went on, you believe, when your husband and your daughter went to Austin and Danielle's that day.
He called me about 8 o'clock that morning to tell me that Danielle wasn't home. And we talked about, who he had been in touch with or who he had reached out to. No one in her side of the family had he even tried to contact. None of the friends that I knew she was close with had he reached out to. He talked about people he knew, more so of his friends than her friends. So I waited a little bit, a couple of hours into the morning, and I texted him and I said, I kept asking him, have you heard from her? Do you know where she is? Can you, you know, and he would always respond that he didn't know, he hadn't heard anything. So about 10, maybe 11 o'clock that morning, I reached out to my husband, who was at work at the time, and he was a lot closer to Danielle's home than we were where I was, our home. So I said, you need to go over there and check on her and check and see what's going on. So Chuck left work early. He drove out there to Danielle's home by himself at the time. Hagen was still there and asked Austin what was going on. At this time, please remember that we were not concerned as much, you know, about Danielle being gone.
Mm-hmm.
So he went out there. He talked to Austin. Austin gave us the story about going, going out there on Sunday with his friends, but that he had not heard back from Danielle. So Chuck was, you know, he at the time he was there, the baby was there. There wasn't anything that alarmed him at that point. When he left there and came on back home, he didn't go back to work. He came home. Well, in the meantime, my oldest daughter, Austin, had called a really good friend of Danielle's, reached out to her, and asked if she had seen Danielle, because I had told him, I said, why don't you check with her friend Jenny? And so he said, oh yeah, I need to call Jenny. So he called Jenny. Jenny ends up reaching out to my oldest daughter and asking her if she had heard anything. And Tana, my daughter, comes over to our home. She lives about an hour and a half away from us. So she comes down here to our home and gets here around, I want to say, probably about 3:30, 4 o'clock. She picks up her dad because now things are really starting to bother us.
Sure.
Now things are really starting to concern us because it's been so far 2 days almost, or a full day.
Like 36, let's just call like 30 hours at least.
At least.
Mm-hmm.
So Danielle, so her and her dad drives out there to Austin's home. And Austin, by the time they got there, Hagen was gone. Austin had called his mother, and this was proven by phone records of his that I was able to see when they pulled his phones, the phone records from the phone company.
Okay.
There were texts to his mother about her coming and getting Hagen, and this was done on Sunday around 11:30.
11:30 in the morning.
On
Okay.
Sunday the 22nd.
Okay.
So I did see those. I physically saw these texts that, you know, he said, you know, for him, that Austin, he used the excuse of Hagen wants to come see you. He wants you to come get him and see your animals. Austin's mother at the time lived in Delhi, Louisiana, which is over a 7-hour drive from their home. He wanted her to come pick up their son for the weekend, to come pick up his son, not any specific time.
Okay.
He wanted her to come pick up their son because he wanted to go see the animals. I know from many conversations with my daughter, Danielle, that she did not like Hagen staying off at his mother's house. If he was to go to their home, Danielle was with him. She stayed with him. She did not let him stay. He was 3 years old. She did not like the idea of him going over to his mother's that far away from her.
Okay.
So she would not have allowed Hagen to be picked up and taken off by his mother.
So what you're also saying, though, is that he would met these guys on Sunday, and right around the time he was meeting these guys is when he was also contacting his mother saying, to come get Hagen at
Yes.
some point.
Yes.
Okay. And do you know if the
Yeah.
mother got there, when was it then? Monday morning sometime then?
No, Monday afternoon around
Monday.
3 o'clock. Because Chuck, he was there when Chuck was there.
Mm-hmm.
Chuck left, and he left around, I would say, around 2 o'clock. And then they show back up around 4:30. Danielle, Tana, and Chuck showed up, and in that window of time, his mother had already shown up at the house, picked up Hagen, and turned around and drove all the way back home.
Okay.
7-hour drive.
Mm-hmm.
No time had she ever, in all the years that they'd known each other and lived together, had that woman had ever driven down here and turned around and went back within the same day, within an hour of itself.
Okay.
She would always come and stay for at least 2 or 3, maybe a week's time.
Mm-hmm. At any point, do you know at any point, being that you did see these records, I have not seen these records, but being that you know about this contact that Austin made with his mother, at any point in any of those conversations, to your knowledge, did he tell her that Danielle was missing?
I don't know that.
Okay.
I cannot honestly say that he told her.
Okay. So let's move back to, Tana and your husband, her father, get there at like 4:30. Hagen's gone, so Austin is there by himself. What goes on?
Austin was very, I wasn't there, so I'm not going to get into his.
Right, and I will talk about it, but just so what
yes.
your understanding is, I will tell the listeners what Tana told me afterwards, but your understanding.
My understanding from my daughter and from my husband in conversation with them is that he was very agitated, very nervous acting, which was uncommon for him. He wasn't this kind of cool person that he always, proceeds to be. He started talking about Danielle the day before, Sunday, and what happened, and that he'd left her at the house. He said he told Tana and my husband that he did not want to wake Danielle up Sunday, that he was going to let her sleep. And knowing my grandson and how hyper Hagen is, that he would not have let Danielle sleep, and she would not have slept through him. She would have gotten up, and she would have been a very active person in his morning. Danielle is a light sleeper, so she would not have slept through Austin being up, getting dressed, getting Hagen ready, fixing breakfast. She would not, and she also would not have let him leave her at home because, one, her vehicle wasn't there, so it would have left her with no transportation.
Mm-hmm.
She would not have allowed him to, and this is, Austin had told me that he had taken Hagen over to his father's house, and so that he could go to the bar.
Right.
Danielle would not, and I know this because I know my conversations with my daughter numerous times over the years. She did not like Hagen being around his father, and especially going over to his home without one of them being there. He had drinking problems.
Okay.
So Danielle was not comfortable with him in those conditions. So Danielle would not have let Austin take the baby over there, leave her at home with no transportation, and she wouldn't have slept through their morning rituals.
Okay. Now, what you also told me about your husband and your daughter going over there, it was the condition of the house. Of course, you talked about how he seemed nervous, but what about the condition of the house?
The house was in disarray, and Danielle had a problem with I can't remember OCD.
Mm-hmm.
She liked everything organized. She liked everything in its place. She liked her kitchen cleaned up. She liked her clothes put away. Person. and she would not have left the house all messed up. Danielle would have kept things, picked up and put away. Her home would have not been in the condition that it was in, according to my daughter and my husband.
Okay. Now, something important to remember here, though, that I'm not sure you realized at the time, maybe your husband and your daughter didn't know this, but Danielle Suburban was at the house when they went there on Monday.
Yes.
Even though, of course, when you talked to Megan later, you found out that she had left her Suburban at Megan's on Saturday night.
Right.
Okay, so I want
and I'll get into that after
we'll certainly come back to that. All right, so they go over there. Their opinion is Austin was acting a little nervous. They got to go in the house, somewhat in a disarray. Their understanding, your understanding, was not the way that Danielle would have allowed her house to be. Her son is gone. Austin's mother came and picked him up and whisked him off back to a totally different state. And how long were your husband and your daughter there with Austin?
Well, they got there, I would say, around 4:30, 5 o'clock in the evening.
Mm-hmm.
When they Austin started telling them about all the, about the Sunday and the time window and all of that, about leaving her there.
Yeah.
And coming home and her being gone. So they were there. I would probably say around 6:30 is they were there for 2 or 3 hours.
Okay.
Hannah had told me that because it had been more than 24 hours, she was very concerned about Danielle missing. Extremely. Her and Chuck both were very concerned about her missing at this point in time, and nobody hearing from her at all. So she told Austin that because of the 24-hour window, that she wanted him to report her missing and to call the police. Well, he wouldn't do it. He didn't want to do it. He told them that he was concerned about his case against with CPS and how that was going to affect it. He didn't want her going missing, to have any interference with that decision, the court decision.
Yes.
So he didn't want to call. He was just going to wait and see if she shows up. And Tana was very adamant with him that either he called or she was. So they ended up reporting Danielle's missing. When the police, or the highway patrol, I guess he was a highway patrolman, in sheriff's office, he was a sheriff. When he shows up there, Austin automatically starts telling him what happened on Sunday, and he also started telling the sheriff that Danielle was bipolar. And Tana got all upset when he said that, and she asked him, "Where are you getting that information? How was she ever diagnosed?" He said, "Well, your mother told me that she was." "No, I never did. I never had Danielle ever tested for bipolar. She was tested as a young child in kindergarten with having attention deficit, ADD. But at no point in that child's life did I ever take her in and have her tested and been given a diagnosis of bipolar. That was him diagnosing her, which he did quite a bit. He would analyze and tag somebody based on what he knew.
Mm-hmm.
So he was telling all of this stuff to the sheriff, and that, that Danielle did this before in the past, which was not true, because Danielle, if she ever left, she would not just go and not call somebody. If Danielle was not, had left and gone to a friend's house, people would know where Danielle was. She wasn't a person that would leave and not tell someone where she was. She would not have left her son and not know where, not taking with her. Danielle just wasn't that kind of person.
So what did the police? So what did the police do? So what did the police do?
I knew where she was.
Mhm. So they take this report. It sounds like Austin didn't want to fill it out for his own personal reasons. But Tana, did, get it done. And what did the police do?
Tana and Chuck got real upset with this sheriff because he was listening to everything that Austin was telling them. My daughter and my husband were speaking up saying, this is not like Danielle. This is not how she is. Something is not right here. We want your superior. We want you to call your superior. So the supervisor finally shows up at their home. And the sheriff, the original officer that showed up, took Austin outside, I believe, and the supervisor stayed with Chuck and Tana. And he was asking them, what do you mean? Why do you say this isn't right? Tana told him this is not something my sister would do. Her dad agreed. They told him that something's not right with this. This story doesn't match up. There's something wrong here. There's some kind of foul play going on here. Danielle would not have just up and disappeared, and no one know where she is. No friends, no family, her kids, nobody knew where she was. And she told them something is not right here. And she also told the sheriff or the supervisor about Danielle not being bipolar, that she was never diagnosed with that condition. And her dad was very much adamant as well. So they ended up taking the statement that Austin gave about leaving her home Sunday and so forth and coming home and she being gone. So that was reported, and so they took the report, and they said that they would be back in touch with us. They gave us
and this all happened on Monday.
This was happening on Monday evening.
Okay, and you were not there, but this is what you were told, and like I said, Tana also told me about some of these things. Any searches done? We'll get back to you and Megan, but any searches done? Anything like that? Did the police?
It took almost 2 weeks.
Yeah.
It took almost 2 weeks for the police the sheriffs to release the approval for Texas EquiSearch to come out and start a search for her. It was not the following weekend, but the weekend after that Texas EquiSearch put together a search parties. They spent this started on Friday. They came into Magnolia. We set up at the Cowboy Church close around the corner from Danielle's home, and it was also a church that she attended with her children. The pastor of the church was gracious enough to open the doors to the church and allow us to have that as our gathering place. And I had, between all of our family and friends and acquaintances, people that did not even know us but knew about Danielle's disappearance, showed up. We had over 100 people show up for these searches. We spent Friday, Saturday, and Sunday hitting and designating areas to search all around Magnolia. Magnolia is a very rural area, so it has a lot of heavy wooded locations and property, big chunks of property that were all hard, that had to be searched very closely. And so places that we felt from between Megan's home and Danielle's home were scoped out, and areas that would be a potential location where she could be. So that search started on that weekend, and that was one of many hundreds of searches that we did in that local area.
And you also told me that over the next weeks and months, maybe, you also posted flyers of Danielle's picture going out quite a bit outside Magnolia.
Yes, between my company that I work for and my niece's company, we had over 5,000 flyers printed of Danielle's poster. And we went to all of the surrounding post offices and got lists of all of the zip code areas in the surrounding towns and cities around Tomball and Magnolia. And we, through friends and family, sat down and did what we call a bulk mail. And we put all of these flyers out and took them to each one of the post office locations by zip codes and sent them out to all of the homes all the landowners and all of the homes that were out there, because there was no way that we could cover all of these areas. There was just no way.
Sure.
So in the flyer, it was of Danielle and of all the criteria, the phone number to call, the sheriff's department, if they reported anything. We also asked to, in the flyer, to check all of your property, your buildings, any area that you feel that, someone could be. And we had those mailed out.
Okay. So you did a lot. There were searches done. There was flyers posted, not just in Magnolia, but outside the area. All
Yes.
this was done over the next days, weeks, and months.
Months and months.
Okay. All right. So, in your opinion, at that time, once again, in those first few days, how long was Austin questioned? In minutes, in hours, once again, to your knowledge, about Danielle's disappearance?
He was never questioned.
Well, he was talked to. I mean, he was talked to that. He was asked. He was talked to that day.
He lawyered up. Day one. Austin lawyered up.
Okay.
He shut himself off. He would not talk. He wouldn't talk to the police. He has never. He would not. He was not communicating with her dad and I after that day. He never reached out, never called us, never talked to us. His son was taken to Louisiana by his mother. She took him off. We've not seen our grandson in over 5 years.
Since Danielle disappeared.
Yes.
Okay.
And we've not been allowed to see him.
Okay.
He doesn't probably honestly remember us.
Okay.
Austin has made no communication with us. We had, not only did we have flyers made up, we had magnets for our cars made up. He was actually given a set of magnets for his vehicle, and he gave them to his neighbor. He wouldn't even put them on his own vehicle. He put posters around his fence yard of no trespassing. He did not put out any flyers for Danielle. He did not look for Danielle.
Okay, we're going to come back to him. I want to keep that all in mind. But I want to move on to some other things because we've talked about them, and I think these are very important for the listeners to even better understand everything that was going on. We've talked about Megan. She was the person who had the house that where this get-together was had on Saturday evening. You finally did get to talk to her. You said that Tuesday, so the day after your daughter and your husband were at Austin's. How did you get to talk to Megan, and what did you two talk about?
Well, and in the beginning, we had communicated with Austin, and that's when he told us that they had been out there at this friend's house on Sunday or Saturday evening. So I asked him, I said, who are you talking about? And he proceeded to tell us that it was her friend Megan, that they had met, and her husband Charles. So I said, where is this place? Where is their home? So he told me where they lived. So Chuck and I went out there to a place, and that's how we met Megan, and that's how we met Charles. And this is also the first time we had ever met Spody. Because they all lived they lived in that part there. So Chuck and I went out and spent probably 2 to 3 hours visiting with them, and that's when we found out about how they met through another couple. They all had hooked up together one evening about a week before that, and hung out together, and that's how Danielle and Megan had met and became friends. They just clicked. They got along real well. So that's how Danielle had started getting to know her. So when they also told us that they had gotten together that evening, that Saturday night at their home. They were going to go to Danielle's home originally, but Charles, because of his condition and being in a wheelchair, was more comfortable at his home. So they all met out at Charles and Megan's home that night. And that's where they had their barbecue.
Is this when you found out that, of course, Megan told you, I'm guessing, about them having these disagreements?
Yes.
You know, this tense, some of the things we've already covered, but is this when you found out that Danielle had left her vehicle at her place?
Yes. Megan told me that Danielle went home with Austin that night.
Okay. And are you saying then that the day before, when Austin saw your husband and daughter, he'd said nothing about Danielle's vehicle being left over there?
No.
Okay.
He didn't tell us. He did not explain how he had to go back and get it.
Okay.
Megan had told us what had taken place.
All right. And what she said was, at some point on Sunday, Austin with some friends, and we'll get into this, but Austin and some friends came and picked her vehicle up on Sunday.
Yes.
All right. I want the listeners to remember that. Okay. So you got to talk to Megan, and talked about a lot of things that we've already covered. But we're going to mention them again. What else was missing besides Danielle?
Her phone, her cell phone, her purse. Danielle was the kind of person I would like to call a bag lady.
Okay.
Danielle, when she left home, it was kind of like she took her belongings with her, so to speak. I mean that in a fun way. But Danielle had all of her electronics in a bag. She had all of her plugs, all of her, her things, her personal things. Danielle had her purse with her all the time. She had her cell phone with her all the time. She had an iPad that she had with her. She had all of her electronics in her bag. She carried a little tote bag. Danielle had everything with her. And these were things that were not found.
Okay, so Danielle's missing,
that were missing,
and her purse are missing, her phone is missing, and some of these items are still missing.
That is correct.
Okay. Let's talk about the phone records. Have you seen Danielle's phone records from that night that /morning that she disappeared?
No, because the only records that were asked for, that they asked for both Danielle and for Austin's records. The sheriff's office did when they were doing their investigation in Montgomery County. They got Austin's, but for some reason, the phone company canceled out the order for Danielle's. So it took months for them to get her phone records.
Okay.
But I was not ever given access to them.
But do you know what they say?
They claim that there was nothing unusual about her phone records, that there weren't anything that concerned them about her phone records.
Okay, I'll just ask you point blank. Was her phone ever used after she left the party that morning at approximately 1:30 in the morning when she, Austin, and their son got in Austin's truck to allegedly go home? Was her phone ever used after that, to your knowledge?
My knowledge is that there was a phone call that or a message that she got around 4:15 from Spody, wanting to make sure she was okay. Again, these are people that saw how things escalated before they left.
Right.
So he reached out to her about 4:15 with asking her if everything was okay. There were messages, and I have them on my phone because I still have record of all these messages. But I had reached out to her Sunday morning wanting her to call me to see how things went with her visitation with her sons. Again, Sunday, I was not aware of what was going on. Megan told me when we visited with her that she reached out to Danielle, that texted her around 9:30, 10 o'clock, saying, letting her know that they were awake and to come on to the house, that they were ready to, that it was okay for them to come on over.
And get the Suburban.
Yes, but didn't mention to get the Suburban, but it was okay for them to come on over because they knew about what Austin was going to do and what her and Megan had plans to do.
Right.
And she was letting Danielle know that they could come on over. They were all awake. And
so once again, I'll just ask you again: is there any, to your knowledge, did Danielle ever use her phone after she left the house that night?
No.
Okay.
She did not.
All right. Speaking of Megan, once again, she did say that she was the one that eventually told you about how Danielle told her that Danielle missed her appointment that Saturday morning. Is that when you found out about that? Kind of just to drop.
Yes.
All right, just to come full circle on that, being that we talked about that later, that's when you found out about that.
That Megan had explained to me what had taken place.
Okay.
Saturday morning, what Danielle had told her when they hooked up when they ran into each other at Walmart.
Okay.
Danielle had told her all what had happened and that she missed her visitations and that she does hold Austin responsible for the alarms being turned off.
Okay. So once again, talking about Megan, you find out that Danielle's vehicle was left there. Does Megan talk to you about how Austin acted when he came to pick up Danielle's vehicle that Sunday? What was the conversation between those two specifically?
When he showed back up at the house, he was in a truck with two other people. When Megan met him outside to get Danielle's Suburban, Megan asked him, "Where is Danielle? I've been trying to get her all day. I've been trying to reach her, but I've not heard back from her." And the first thing Megan told me, Austin told her, was, "Don't worry about it. She won't be coming back over here." And I asked Megan, I said, "Well, how did you respond to that? What did you tell him?" And she told him, she said, "What do you mean by that?" And he told her she said he was trying to think of something real quick, that kind of response. But he said, "Oh, well, she makes friends, and the next thing you know, she drops them. She doesn't want to be friends with them anymore."
All right, so at no point.
It's not true because
all right,
I know my daughter.
All right, I'm sure that's true. But the point is that at no point did he say, "Yeah, she's missing. Yeah, I got up. Yeah, she's not." He didn't say that.
No. Okay. He just told her that she wasn't coming back over there.
Okay. All right, that was on Sunday, and we'll get a little bit more into these friends of his in a bit. Let's talk about this picture. I'm not sure what to make of this, but this is a picture of Danielle sleeping on a couch, Spody also sleeping on a couch. When was this taken, and how did you all find out about it?
Austin had shown a picture to me, or he texted me a picture of, and you can't even tell it's her, but he said his explanation of this picture was that Danielle had been had gone out with Megan, gone over to Megan's Thursday night, and they were supposed to be going to the rodeo. This was during rodeo time. And they were going to go to the rodeo. Well, they all ended up not going. Austin was home with Hagen. And they ended up not going to the rodeo and stayed at Megan's house. Danielle ended up staying the night. She was on the couch, according to Megan. She had fallen asleep and on the couch. Well, Spody also, they have like an L-shaped couch, and Spody had also fallen asleep on the couch. The next morning, about probably 4:30, Austin shows up at their house, looks inside the window, and sees the two of them sleeping on the couch. No, fully clothed, nothing, other than two people sleeping.
Okay.
And the window in their mobile home, it was a mobile home, so it had an open window, split window, and he takes a picture of the two of them sleeping on the couch. He leaves that house and goes around leaves the park altogether and goes down to some other property a little ways away and stays there till about, I want to say, about 7:30 in the morning. He's got Hagen with him. So when he gets back to the house, he starts banging and knocking on the door, which woke everybody up.
And this was when? Just to remind the listeners again, how long was this before Danielle disappeared?
This was Friday.
Friday morning. Friday morning. Okay.
Friday morning.
Okay.
She disappeared. This was not until Sunday morning.
Right. Okay.
So they get into their conversation. They get into their talk. He doesn't, Danielle and him actually went home at that point. They left and went home.
Okay.
Friday night, apparently, I'm not sure, if the conversation, how it went from there, but Danielle she was going to come to my house Friday night. That Friday night.
Right. That was going to be for the meetup that she was supposed to have with her children the next morning.
That is correct.
Okay.
So
when did you find out about this? When
do
you
find the two of them had gone out and went shopping to get things for the boys to do.
Right. When did you find out about this picture? How did you find out about it?
The next week, Austin had made a point to send that picture to me, and he also made a point to tell me about seeing them sleeping on the couch. And he wanted to show me that picture.
Okay. And do you think that he was trying to infer that Danielle was cheating on him? Did the picture come with any type of explanation? I guess that's what I'm saying.
No.
Okay.
He did not. He did not try to say that there was anything physical.
You had a chance to talk to Spody, I know. Did he ever say anything about that picture?
Yes, he did tell me that Austin had taken that picture. He did express to me that he was scared of Austin, that, because of them being on the couch sleeping. He told me the only reason that they were on that couch together, that they had an ottoman that was part of the couch, and the ottoman kept slipping away, so they weren't able to sleep on the couch without falling. So he had laid on the couch with her, and that's all there was to it. Megan also agreed and told me that there was nothing to the two of them being on the couch.
Okay.
These came from two different people. Friday afternoon, Danielle and Austin went home, or Friday morning, they went home, and on Saturday, when I'm trying to think here. It was Saturday morning.
That was in the morning that she was supposed to see her kids.
Yes, it was Sunday morning. That's the morning I'm trying to think of.
Okay.
Sunday morning, Austin had no, it was Saturday. I'm sorry, not morning. Saturday, when they had all made the decision to meet back up at Megan's house, Austin had made arrangements with Spody to meet him at this different bar. Not the bar they went to Sunday, but a different bar. Spody told me that he met up with Austin over there, and he had this girlfriend come with him.
Mm-hmm.
When Austin and them met at the bar, they sat at one table and made the girl go sit somewhere else and had a conversation between the two of them.
So the day after, Austin takes a picture of Spody and Danielle on couches sleeping, not sleeping together, but on sleeping. And this is kind of weird to me that he's just creeping around with his son in the car, taking pictures through windows and doors, and take this. Okay, so there's that. The very next day, Austin and Spody have this meeting at this bar together, and this would have been at the same time that Danielle was out with Megan that day. What was the content of that get-together that Spody had with Austin? Did he say?
We don't know.
Spody won't tell you?
Know. No. The conversation, even the young girl was interviewed by the police because she wasn't sitting next to them, did not know what the conversation was about. Austin never indicated what the conversation was about.
Have you ever specifically asked Spody about this conversation?
Oh, yeah.
And what did he say? And how does he respond?
He put it off. He put it off that they were making amends about what Austin saw Friday morning. Okay.
All right. Well, maybe that might be the truth.
Could be.
Could be. All right. Maybe. Okay. All right. So we have that. It was a little complicated, but I wanted to make sure to cover that. Now, let's talk finally about that Sunday. So we've talked about how Austin had made arrangements the day before to get together with Spody and Charles to move all of this furniture, I'm guessing chairs and tables, at a bar. Charles thought it was weird. That's Megan's man or husband, boyfriend. Charles thought it was weird because he is in a wheelchair. But this did happen. They did go to this bar. Charles was there. Spody was there. This would have been the day that Danielle disappeared. And why don't you talk about what you found out, what Charles said about them getting together at the bar around 11:30 that morning, the Sunday that Danielle disappeared.
11:30, 12 o'clock is about the time that they got over there. They were together.
Yay.
This came from both Spody and Charles, both, not just one or the other.
Okay.
But both of them concurred that when Austin got there, he really didn't help move any furniture. They said he really didn't do a lot of help. But one of the things that kind of bothered them is that he told them, be sure and tell me when it's going to be 3:30. I need to know when it's going to be 3:30. They told me when that time came around, and they let him know that it was 3:30. He didn't do anything. He didn't call anybody. He didn't say, okay, we need to go. He didn't make any, other than just being told it was 3:30, things just kind of stayed normal. And then about maybe 30 minutes to an hour later, they all load up, and he takes Charles and Spody back over to Charles's home and drops him off and leaves the park.
Mm-hmm.
An hour later, which would not have been enough time for him to leave that park. Now, mind you, Danielle's supposed to be at home asleep.
Right. This is
So
why.
he,
This is just
he
to set this
left.
up. Just to set this up, if I may, I told the listeners. Remember what he said. Austin told you, he told your husband and your daughter what had happened was that Danielle was still home. He leaves to meet these guys at 11:30, and then he claimed he went home and she was gone. That's what he said. Now,
Correct.
what you're going to say is that it wouldn't have been enough time for him to drop Charles off, go home, see that she wasn't there, and then come back to that place in an hour.
That is correct.
All right.
But he also dropped why he would have. He ended up coming back, not in his own vehicle, but he ended up coming back with two real good friends of his,
Vicky and Dwayne.
Vicky. He ended up coming back. They're a couple, but they're very close, almost like surrogate parents to him. He ended up going to their home, getting them, and coming back to Megan's home and picking up Danielle's Suburban. And that's when Megan confronted him in her, outside before he left in the Suburban. And that's when he told her to not worry about it, that she would not be coming back over there.
All right, and I'm sure the listeners remember that from about 20 minutes ago when you said that. So that's how that happened. And let me just do this again for the listeners, the way you've explained it. So Austin says that when he went to this bar to meet these guys at 11:30, of course at 11:30 is also when he would have been contacting his mother to come get Hagen. He meets he gets Charles and he gets Spody. They go to this bar. They're supposed to be moving tables and chairs and things around. He's telling them to let them know when it's 3:30. Who knows why that is. 4 o'clock, they leave. He takes Charles back to Megan's, correct?
Correct.
All right, and then he leaves, and then an hour later he comes back with Vicky and Dwayne to pick up the Suburban.
Correct.
Okay. But what he told you is that he went home, but there would have been no way for him to leave Megan and Charles's place, go home, get Vicky and Dwayne, and then come back.
Correct.
The only way that timeline works of an hour is if he went directly from Charles and Megan's to wherever Vicky and Dwayne were and come back.
Correct.
And not go back to actually his house where he would have seen whether Danielle was there or not.
That is correct.
Okay.
That is correct.
All right, great. Thank you. All right, so you see, we eventually tie all these things up on Unfound. It sometimes just takes a little while depending on the disappearance. Very good. Okay, so Vicky and Dwayne, they pick up, they get the Suburban. You've had a chance to talk to Charles and Spody. At any time during those hours that they were together on that Sunday, did Austin say anything about Danielle fighting with her? Did Danielle's name come up during those hours at all, to your knowledge?
No.
Did he ever say, "Man, Danielle and I really had an argument last night. Wow, it was really bad"? Anything like that at all?
Only the conversation that he had with my daughter.
Okay, that was. But I'm talking about that Sunday. Being that they had just been arguing like not even 12 hours before that, and Charles and Spody were a witness to it. When later that day on that Sunday, did Danielle's name come up at all? While they were moving tables and chairs around?
Yes. Whenever, the whole time that what I was told by Charles and Spody, that when the whole time that he was at the bar, he kept talking about Danielle being bipolar, Danielle being schizophrenic, Danielle's personality. He kept going on. This stage of Danielle's personality.
Mhm.
For some reason, they didn't understand why he kept going on about how Danielle was.
All right, so that's how he was talking about Danielle on that Sunday
Yes.
with these guys.
That Sunday. That
Okay.
Sunday at the bar, talking about
All right.
how she was, one minute she was doing this, one minute doing that, and, trying to give the understanding or the impression how unstable Danielle was.
Okay. All right, so we have that going on, and then he continued that the next day when he talked to the police.
Yes, he did.
Okay. I don't mind using their names because it is out in the public. Vicky and Dwayne King are the two friends of Austin's who were with him that day that picked up the Suburban.
Yes, they were.
Okay. Have you ever had a chance to talk to them about what Austin said about Danielle's disappearance that day? Did he ever explain why they had to go over there and get her Suburban?
No, I've never had any conversation with either one of them.
And why is that?
Because they are not a person that I've met but maybe once or twice.
Mm-hmm.
And they are extremely protective of Austin. Overprotective of Austin.
You explained to them.
They know how we feel about this situation.
Okay. Are they? I'm guessing. I have not looked up his age, but I'm guessing Austin is in his late 30s now.
Yes, him and Danielle were. I think he was either her age or 1 year younger.
Okay.
I'm sorry. He is by a few months younger than her.
Okay.
He was born in 82.
Okay. Then I too understand that Vicky and Dwayne are quite a bit older, maybe in their 50s or something like that.
They are younger than Chuck and I. So yeah.
Okay. All right. And how does Austin even know these two?
He has known them for quite a few years. Grew up with them pretty much as neighbors out where he lived.
Mm-hmm.
But he knew them, and he ended up buying the property that Danielle and him have from them by a handshake.
Okay. All right. So these were the two that he chose to get, not just one of them, but both of them. And they used their vehicle to go get Danielle's Suburban. Once again, you've never talked to them, so you don't know what Austin told them the reason that they had to do this.
Correct.
Okay. All right. Okay, so there's that, and once again, if anybody looks up any news articles of Danielle's disappearance, you will find that at least Vicky King has been quoted. Spody, his real name is Trey Renken, Renken, is that correct?
Yes,
okay.
That is correct.
Have you ever had a chance to talk to him about the text that he sent to Danielle at 4:15 a.m., asking if she was all right? Do you have a chance to talk to him about that?
Well, in the conversation that we had that day that we met everybody,
mm-hmm.
He had told me that he had, he sent that text to her. That's the only reason I know
mm-hmm.
that the text was there. Because, again, I haven't seen her phone records. Any information from her phone records were provided by the detective that was following her case at the time. And he verified
mm-hmm.
that was a text that she got at 4:15 in the morning.
And have you ever asked Spody about it to explain just what caused him to do that?
Yes, he did tell me that he was concerned about Danielle, about the condition that things were left when they left the house.
Because of Austin and Danielle, because of Austin and Danielle arguing? Yes,
correct.
Okay. All right, and we have to remember that Spody and Austin got together the day before, earlier that day of the party, allegedly to sort things out because of this picture that was taken. Austin seemingly just creeping around and taking pictures through screen doors. I shouldn't exaggerate. Taking a picture, maybe he did take more than one. We just don't know, but we know of one that he sent to you.
Correct.
Did Spody ever think that that was weird that Austin did that? Did that creep him out? Did he ever talk about that?
No, he didn't. He was just more. Austin is a larger man than he is,
Mm-hmm.
and very. He is, and we know, Austin's a very strong person, based on the work that he does as a business. Spody was scared of him in that respect.
Okay. All right, so we have this picture. Austin eventually sends it to you with no explanation, but my opinion is that he was trying to send some sort of message or something, maybe even a reason that Danielle herself would have taken off on her own. I don't know. What eventually happened with Austin's, of course, this abuse that was alleged? What happened with that case?
Danielle's went missing in March. He had a court date set in May. This was even after Danielle's disappearance. So they had a final court decision because there was not the adults that the district attorney was going to, using to press the charges against him. They let it go. They dismissed it.
So just to be clear, just to put this simply, Austin was never charged with anything. Yet there was no penalties, no fines, no probation, no jail time, anything regarding the allegations that he abused Danielle's two older sons.
He was indicted, but he was not charged.
Okay. So once again, no penalties, nothing.
Right.
Okay. Do you have any idea how their father felt about that, Brandon, being that he was the one who initially discovered it?
He was, when Danielle went missing, it pretty much put the boys in his hands without any further fight. It also cleared Austin of any more financial burden with her attorney, the financial strain of the evaluation that had been finalized and approved. So the main thing that Brandon wanted was, to no longer have to go to court and fight for, fight with Danielle about the children. So he knew he wasn't that taken with it. He wasn't bothered that strongly about it.
So even though let me just state this maybe another way. So you're telling me that he went through enough trouble to bring up what he saw, physical abuse, once again not sexual abuse, but physical abuse, what he called physical abuse. But then eventually Brandon was okay that the person who didn't suffer anything for doing that?
Pretty much.
Okay. All right, I just wanted to be clear on that. And so Brandon got custody of the two older children?
Correct.
And still has custody of them to this day?
That is correct.
Okay. Now, something that came up, I don't know when this happened. I did not write this in the notes, but at some point, Austin claims that he has no memory of that morning. Of course, his story is that Danielle Hagen got home. They went to bed. He gets up the next morning. Danielle's there. He takes his son somewhere, goes to this bar, allegedly comes home, but we've already talked about that, and Danielle's gone. But for those hours that they should have been sleeping from approximately 2 a.m. until sometime after the sun came up, he said he had no memory of that. Could you please explain that?
When they finally sat down, when the sheriff's department or the detectives finally sat down and took his statement, he could remember all of the things that happened the day before, what happened at the party, and what happened after he got up the next day, the next morning, from mid-morning on. But for at least a good 10 to 12 hours, he can't recall what happened during that time. And this is his statement.
How do you know that? Who told you that? Who told you that?
The detectives.
Okay.
The detectives, based on his statement, that he could not remember. He had a clear memory of everything happening the night before and everything happening the day following. But during those hours of early morning till mid-morning, he couldn't remember anything.
Okay. All right. So he's maybe could it be because he was drinking at this party? Could that be?
I
Kind of
was
a blackout?
told by the people at the party that he probably had about 6 beers.
And he's a big fella.
Yeah, he's a big guy.
Okay.
But he does get very, I've been told by my daughter that he gets aggressive when he drinks.
Okay. Well, I'm more concerned about his memory right now. I'm just saying,
Yeah.
I've never been a drinker, so I can't talk, but I do know some people that drink and then they forget what they done the night before. I'm asking you, is that a possibility given what you heard about that party?
No.
Okay.
It wasn't enough consumption, from what I was told by a couple of people that were there, that the consumption of liquor was not enough that he would have had any memory loss.
Okay. When was the last time you spoke, and maybe we should be clear about this, who is the controlling legal authority in this disappearance? What police department is responsible for Danielle's disappearance?
Montgomery County.
When was the last time you spoke to them about Danielle's case?
Probably about a month ago.
Month ago? In the last...
We call and check on it periodically, because they don't call us. They don't reach out to us and tell us anything at all. Whenever I need, we call periodically, at least every month, to find out where things are, what's going on, if they have any updates, anything that they can share with us. They do not freely come to us and give us any updates.
Okay, that's very, very common. At any time over the last 5 years, have they offered up their own theory as to what happened to Danielle?
They claim they believe that he is responsible for her disappearing.
Austin is disappearing.
Yes.
Okay.
Yes, but they have not ever tagged him as being a person of interest, or that they've never charged him.
Mm-hmm.
They say that there are several people that they are looking at, but they don't have him as a prime suspect.
Were any forensics done on his truck at all?
Yes.
After she
They did not take his truck right away. They didn't. They waited, probably it was either a month or 2 months after she went disappearing, that she disappeared, that they confiscated his truck. Austin's truck at that time was basically a trash truck. And what I mean by that is that he never cleaned it out, ever. They said that people would get in the car with him, and if they left something in it, they gave up on trying to find it. He did never clean the truck out. It was filthy, from what I've been told by my daughter and by other people that have been in his truck, that it just was a very trashy truck. And when they picked up his truck, and this was from the detectives, that it was spotless. The truck was spotless. He used chemicals inside the truck to clean it all out. He took everything out, vacuumed it out, got rid of any trash that was in the truck. The truck was spotless.
This is what the police told you.
Yes.
Okay.
And they kept it, and they went all over it. Well, he'd already cleaned everything up.
Do you know if Austin still has that truck?
I don't know. We've driven by the home several times, but it's so covered over with trees and stuff, and he's got a barn, kind of a shop area behind the house, behind their double wide, that if it's back there, there's no way to see it. And I don't know if she's got her Suburban is still there. I don't know if her Suburban's still there. I don't know if he sold it.
Has anybody ever looked over that property?
Yeah, about a week after Danielle went disappearing, they went out there, the Montgomery County Rescue, and did a search of the property.
Okay. What is Austin done since 2015?
Nothing. Absolutely nothing. He doesn't call the police, and I've asked.
Well, in his own personal life, what has he done with his life since 2015?
Austin has moved on. Austin has, even following her disappearance, within probably a month after her disappearing, he started going out to bars, and people that we know that have been a big, huge follower of Danielle's, and gone on several searches, that do attend work at some of these bars that are out there in the Magnolia Tomball area, that have witnessed him coming into the place and hitting up on women, hitting up on other ladies. That we were told that he has started seeing another lady, another young girl, about 2 years ago, who also comes from previous relations with 2 children. And he has pretty much moved on and started a new relationship with her.
Do you think that she is aware that he was married to a woman who disappeared? Do you think she's aware?
Was is not the word. Is.
I know. No, is. No, I know. It is.
Is married. He's
still. Yeah, they're still married, right?
He's married to my daughter. And yes, this girl was told through numerous communications that, are you aware of what he's done? Are you aware of his wife disappearing?
Mm-hmm.
And apparently, he's convinced her otherwise because she's still with him.
We just want to state for the record, though, that I realize that it certainly does point in one direction, but I'm not saying we necessarily have to keep our minds so open that anything can come in there, but we have to remember that regarding this disappearance, Austin has not been charged with anything. Correct?
That is correct.
All right.
That is correct.
Okay. So we just have to remember that we'll just leave it at that. What has this been like for you, Dinah?
A nightmare. It's just, for the first 2 years, I might have slept 3 hours a day. I every day, I wake up, and she's the first thing that comes into my mind. I might get some break during the day because working is the only reason why I don't lose my mind. My daughter, she's my heart. She's part of my heart. And every day I keep praying and I keep asking, show us where she is. Tell us where she is. she and I were not just mother-daughter, but she was my friend. She and I had this connection. You know, sometimes you just have that connection. And I miss her. I miss her terribly. I miss that laugh of her. She could walk into a room and brighten it up. She had a way of just taking anything and just turning it into laughter, turning it into fun. Danielle, one time, she was learning this is before she had kids and everything, but her dad loves banana pudding.
Huh.
And she'd gone and got all the stuff for it and put it all together and start to serve it and forgot to put the bananas in it.
Huh.
That was and it was one of the.
It's a good story.
It really was, and it was funny because the whole thing is for bananas. But she was getting to where she loved to refurnish things. She was getting into learning how to reupholster stuff, and she was all about trying new things, all about just life. But she didn't like to be angry. She liked to have fun. Whenever you could tell the difference in her when Austin was with her and when he wasn't. When Austin was with her, she was quiet. She was distant. She was subdued. She wasn't that person I knew she was. But whenever she would come over here, the world knew she walked in the door. She was, "Hi, Mom," and she loved her kids. Her children were her life, every bit of her life. I remember when Colton, her oldest child, was born. I came by her house to visit with her one day, and she was sitting on the floor with him, playing with him. And I sat down with her, and we were talking, and she just started crying. And I asked her, I said, "What's wrong?" And she said, "I can't believe he's mine. That I actually had him, and he's mine." Danielle was a true mother and a true caring person. And she would go out of her way to do things for people that she hardly even knew. She met this one girl, this friend of hers. She met some twins, and one of the girls had a baby. And the father of the child, ran off with it. And this child wasn't very old. And Danielle went to court, just hardly knew the girl, but went to court with her and stayed with her by her side until the judge gave the girl the papers to get her child back. And Danielle drove 3 hours with her to get this child and come back. So she spent the entire day helping this young lady get her kid back. When my nephew's wife got pregnant to have her baby, she had a lot of problems with it. So she was bedridden for quite a bit. Danielle would go to her home and wash her hair for her, do her nails, her toenails and her fingernails, and talk to her, play games with her, and just stayed with her for days until TJ would come home, her husband. And, when he got off work and come home, she'd go back and do that again the next day. When Michelle finally had her baby, Danielle would go up to the hospital and spend the day with her because she had complications. But they had to keep Jacob So Danielle would go by and pick up Michelle and take her up to the hospital so that she could see her baby. She did this every day because TJ had to work. She just was that kind of person, that kind of soul, that if you needed her, she would be there. If Chuck and I had to go anywhere, we had dogs. Danielle, I could call her up and say, hon, we're going to be gone for 2 or 3 days. Can you come by and watch? And she lived a good hour away from me. Sure, Mom, no problem. I'll do it. She'd come over here, feed them, give them water, take care of them for me. She never asked for things back. She loved to be, when the kids...
Sounds like she had a huge heart, a big heart.
Yes. When the kids would get out in the yard, Danielle would get out there and be a bigger kid than they were. She didn't have a problem getting in the mud and playing with them in dirt and getting down on the ground and being that mom to them. But she was also their mom. She expected them to have manners, and she did the mother thing, but she was also the play thing with them. That's why Danielle would not have left Hagen. She would not have voluntarily left her her older two. She would not have gotten up and done what he claims her to have done. Left the house and left everybody.
Do you have a website or Facebook page set up for her disappearance for Danielle?
Yes, we have. From day one, we set up her Facebook page. It's Bring Danielle Home.
Okay, just her first name. It doesn't have a Sleeper in there. Just Bring Danielle Home.
Bring Danielle Home.
Bring Danielle on the Facebook page. All right.
And it's got a picture of her and her flyer.
Okay. Are you an administrator on there? Maybe your other daughter's helping you with that, or?
My daughter is the administrator, and I'm on there as one of them.
Okay.
My daughter, Tana.
Okay. And I want to remind the listeners again that I will be talking about my conversation with Tana once this interview is completed. And at this point, I just want to ask you, any final words, Dinah?
Anybody that hears this conversation, our recording, and you know anything or you can help in any way, provide information about Danielle's whereabouts, please reach out to the Montgomery County Sheriff's Department. It's been 5 years, and we don't have any further closeness of where her whereabouts are. If you know Austin and you can provide any information there as well, please come forth. Please let us know what you know.
We have a big audience, especially in Texas. We've covered a lot of disappearances in Texas, Dinah. And in fact, some of my assistants live in Texas, I think at least 3 of them. And so I know a lot of people in the Magnolia, Texas area will be hearing about your interview with me, Unfound, and I'm certainly hoping that somebody comes forward. I mean, hopefully more than one, but at least one. So I'm hoping that you get some help there. And you're very welcome. And I want to thank you for appearing on this episode of Unfound.
Thank you, sir.
You're welcome.
And that was my interview with Dinah Street, mother of Danielle Sleeper. I thank her for joining me and all of you on this episode. As I stated during the interview, I got to speak with Danielle's older sister, Tana. This was important because she got to see Austin in person the very next day after Danielle disappeared. This is what Tana had to say. And these notes are in no particular order. Tana verified that she did go over to Austin and Danielle's later on that day, that Monday. She did verify that her father had been there earlier in the day by himself, but that second time when she was there, they went together. When they got there, Austin was not there. They didn't know where he was. They waited around for a little bit, and Austin finally came home, and he was actually driving Danielle's Suburban. He never gave a reason for that, and he never did say where he was while they were waiting. Austin made them go in the back door of the house and not the front door. He gave no explanation for that. Once they were inside, Tana noticed that the place was very messy. You will remember that Dinah also stated this. In speaking to Tana, I asked her, did it look like he was looking for something or hiding something? And it really just was not clear. All Tana could say was, this is not the way that Danielle would have ever managed her house. Tana did say that Austin had scratches on his head. You should know that Austin is bald. Tana noticed that because Tana's own husband is bald and shaves his own head, so she has some experience in that area. Austin claimed that he had cut his head shaving it. Tana told me that all the years she has been married to her husband, that he has never cut his head. The way that it looked, Austin's was scratched. That was Tana's own observation. That is her opinion. The police eventually did show up while Danielle's father and Tana were there, and Tana heard Austin tell the police that Danielle had left and taken a lot of things with her, including her medicine. Well, Tana, in looking through the house, actually found the medicine that Austin said Danielle had taken. In addition, as far as Tana could tell, the only clothes that were missing from and other things that Danielle had, the only thing that was missing was her phone, her purse, and the clothes that she was wearing at the party on that Saturday night. So once again, somewhat contradicting what Austin told the police at that time. Tana did tell me she was there once again on that Monday evening when Austin told the police he couldn't remember anything from that night after they left that party. That's where that comment, that's when that happened. You'll remember that Dinah and I also talked about that. Well, that was Tana who observed that firsthand, heard that firsthand, where Austin kind of just said, I just don't remember what went on after we left the party. And he just says he just ended up seeing his buddies on Sunday. That's the way he explained it. Tana says, in her opinion, that Austin was nervous. And what they were able to verify in being there is that Hagen, Danielle, and Austin's son was there when the father was there earlier on Monday, but Austin's mother came to pick Hagen up in between the time the father was there and then when he came back with Tana. Tana verified that Austin didn't want to file a report. You remember that also from the interview. And she also verified that the reason Austin didn't want to do it was because he was worried about how that would affect the ongoing abuse investigation, once again, that was going on at the time that Danielle disappeared. However, it was eventually filled out, but Tana says she essentially was the person who provided the information, that Austin was really not that helpful. Something that Dinah and I did not talk about that Tana told me is that a few weeks before Danielle disappeared, Austin insisted on cutting Danielle's hair. And Tana says it was it was like he just hacked her hair on purpose. And this is the first time that she knew that Austin had ever cut Danielle's hair. I don't think, she didn't say this, but I think the inference was that Austin had no experience cutting anybody's hair, but he cut Danielle's. And I think what Tana was trying to say is that he forced Danielle to allow him to cut her hair, and he really did a really, really bad job of it. The other part, the final note that I have regarding my discussion with Tana is that Austin ended up getting a new phone number just a few weeks after Danielle disappeared. Allegedly, the reason was because the police got his phone and somehow messed it up. It wouldn't work anymore or something. So Austin decided to just go get a new phone and a new number. Once again, just a few weeks after Danielle disappeared. And that concludes my notes I took from speaking with Tana, Danielle Sleeper's sister. If you've listened to this program long enough, you know I don't offer up too many opinions or theories. Yes, I write about my extensive thoughts on Patreon, but on here, I don't. There are reasons for that, but I won't go into them now. But in this disappearance of Danielle Sleeper, I really don't know how anyone could not see Austin as the primary and only person of interest. He was obviously stalking his own wife. He was controlling her every decision. He was accused of abusing her two oldest children, but that accusation was not initiated by Danielle herself. The fight during the party witnessed by several people. The fact that Danielle seemingly disappeared wearing the clothes she had on the night of the party. His story about how he went home after meeting with Charles and Spodie to then find Danielle missing. Even though there was no way of time and distance that he could have done that and make it to Megan's to pick up Danielle's vehicle like he did. His lack of help in doing anything to find his wife. His claims that Danielle was bipolar, despite there being no proof she was ever diagnosed with that or any other mental affliction. Do I need to go on? But just for a second, let's entertain the idea that Danielle walked off. If so, where did she go? If so, why didn't anyone see her? If so, if she got picked up by a taxi or Uber or Lyft, why has that driver never come forward? If so, and she ran off with another man, then why isn't that man missing too? If so, why would she run off when she was planning to get divorced, which meant Danielle would probably get custody of her two sons back? You see what I'm saying? The problem? This is all circumstantial. And I have to say, I'm not sure the police have evidence to charge Austin with anything. Even if he were charged, I'm sure a good defense attorney, a lawyer much better than the one Austin got for Danielle, could generate all kinds of reasonable doubt in a jury's mind. Yet, there's something that still sticks out to me. Why did Austin claim he couldn't remember what happened between 2 a.m. and going to see his buddies at 11:30 a.m.? If, once again, if he is responsible for Danielle's disappearance, why didn't he do like so many other men in similar situations have done and claim, I don't know what happened. I got up and she was gone. Well, I have a theory, but I'll keep it to myself for now. What this disappearance should remind us is that all friends are not created equal, and sometimes it's best for them to stay gone and never return. I'll leave the rest of the theorizing up to you. And that's the program. If you found it informative, please go to the app that you use to listen to Unfound and give this podcast a nice review. I thank you for listening. I'm Ed Densel, and you've been listening to Unfound.